Here we go. Didn't get that message last time.
No, exactly. Okay, so just before we begin, I just want to
Mhm.
let everyone know that we are not professionals. We are individuals having a conversation about our lived experience and sharing our opinions. So, yesterday, this is technology for you. We did our podcast episode, but unfortunately, I didn't record or I recorded incorrectly. So, we go again. So, this take two. And yeah, I'm hoping it'll be yesterday was great. So I'm hoping today will be just as good. I'm sure it'll be better because we've got something to work with anyway. So yeah, let's start. So what we're discussing, the topic we're discussing is a very sensitive topic. It is suicide. And it is a very difficult topic to discuss. We recognized that yesterday. However, we did approach it in a sensitive manner and with our own lived experience and our viewpoints, we gave across how we felt, and hopefully that resonated with will resonate with other people. So let's begin. Nazim,
Yeah,
what's
shoot.
your story with suicide?
Well, my story is even though we spoke about yesterday, still
Yeah,
the story of suicide. Well, the first time I did a suicide, my first suicide attempt was back when I was I would say about 14, 15 years old. That was the first time. And the first time I even attempted, I didn't realize I was even attempting. I found myself at my local train station at a platform, and I was quite close to the edge itself. Now I didn't realize I was stepping closer and closer to the edge until a gentleman tapped me in the back and said, "Yo, you're a bit close to the edge. A train's gonna hit you if you're not careful." That guy saved my life that day. He didn't even know it. Um, what was going through my head at the time was sort of montages of different ways I can, take my own life. And that's the crazy thing. When you're a kid, when you're that age, you're having thoughts of death, you know, taking and not just death as in death, but you actually causing your own death. That's a scary thought, especially when you
yeah,
come back to your senses. And what led me to that point was as a kid, man, I went through a series of traumas as a kid. Um, one after the next. It was never really acknowledged. I never really had that support system, even from family itself. Because when you talk about things like suicide, it's a taboo subject. It's like I said, it's a very
yeah.
sensitive
It's very
topic,
sensitive.
but most of it's very taboo. And when we speak about anything in regards to your mental health, as in depression, or you get called all sorts of names, mad boy, crazy, there's only so much of that you can take,
Yeah,
especially school. The school system wasn't really that much help either. You know, I used to get bullied a lot when I was a kid as well. It's not always being due to racism at all. Most of the time, it's basically who I was as a person. I had my own preferences, likes and dislikes. When you're very different, other kids don't like different if it doesn't fit their circle. Um, so that was my first attempt of suicide, but it got worse as I got older because I started seeing the cruel side to life. And the cruel side to life was that if you wanted to be taken seriously, you had to be cruel yourself. That makes sense. Because what I saw when I was a young lad is that I saw cruel people getting away with terrible things. When I used to get bullied a lot when I was a kid, th my teacher told the kid who bullied me to shake my hand, as in boys will be boys. And that kind of frustrated me, and that kind of just threw me down a more of a deep end. And that's what led me to want to take my own life when I was about 14, 15 years old. But fast forwarding it, I attempted suicide about 5 times altogether in my whole lifespan. I'm 33 years old now. The last time I attempted suicide when I was 30 years old. The second time I attempted, I was going to jump off a bridge. And this when I was about 23 years old. And the only reason I survived that was because two elderly couple saw what I was about to do and said, you know, walk me away from what I was about to do, right? I was sectioned at that time as well. I was pretty much sectioned, my first time being sectioned. I've been sectioned twice in my life. Um, it's funny when we talk about suicide, when we talk about our mortality, faced with it, it's a very different feeling, if that makes sense. Like I'm not always sure how to talk about it, if that makes sense. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how to always
I agree. I'm the same because it's such a sensitive
Mm,
topic and people can take it the wrong way as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
good to approach it as sensitive as possible. But I agree with you. I'm exactly the same.
Because you're right, it's a sensitive topic and it'll always be sensitive. There's no way about it as well. I think with me is I think with all of us really, it's like we have to walk on eggshells, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And
But
it's
the
like,
it's so sad though because it if we all spoke about it a lot more, then
mm,
we could all deal with it and handle it
mm,
a lot better in the sense of,
mm,
you see, now I feel like I'm sensitive talking about it, but in the sense of, I remember in my interview, I did an interview recently with Keys, and I said to him, if someone approached you and they were suicidal, what would you do?
mm,
What would you advise them? And he didn't know the answer. He said he wasn't informed enough to know the answer. So us
mm,
talking about suicide and having it as a topic of discussion, we can discuss it can educate people into what avenues to take if they do feel like they are suicidal. Do you know what I mean? So
mm,
it can
yeah.
help guide people, and because there is a lot of help out there. There's Mind Charity, there's the Samaritans. Have you ever phoned the Samaritans? I have.
Yeah, I have. And funny story with the Samaritans is I think it was 2 years ago, I think 2020, something like that, I think it might be. Yeah. I would call Samaritans up once a week. So
Okay.
like once a week, just to talk about anything, not to talk about my issues, but just to have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Eventually, it got to the point, like 6 or 7 months down the line, where they start talking to me about their issues. Like I just want to
Oh,
have a conversation. Like
okay.
I remember, yeah, I remember the one guy, uh, the amount of relationship advice I gave to some folks.
Really?
Yeah, it's like one guy had girl trouble. It's like, man, no, this is not how you speak to women. You gotta approach it differently. And one person had financial issues, so I'm giving him some insight on how they can better save and stay out of debt. So I was essentially having a conversation because I didn't want to talk to him about my issue because I knew they couldn't help with that, because
But
it's
then,
another person. Fine.
did talking help?
Yes, it did help. I found that me helping other folks with their own issues, having a communication, just having just a general conversation, assist me in some ways.
Okay.
Help, it helped me in some because everyone's different in some ways.
Yeah.
Because with me, I think when it was with me, we even touched upon this. Like the first time I actually started taking responsibility for my health, for my depression, and for my suicide ideations that keeps pondering on is when I did my first run, my first 10K run. 2 weeks before the Manchester event, I had a mental breakdown. Then a week later, I attempted suicide again. Right. And of course, I was in no shape to take part in the event, and which kind of brought me down a great deal further down because I want to run because I want a victory. I never
Yeah.
had an actual victory in my life,
Yeah.
never had an actual win that I can call my own. So I had to force myself to the starting line, just force myself to get out of bed, to get on a bus because I couldn't take my car,
Yeah.
take a bus, go right to the Manchester City Centre, and get to the starting line where I'm surrounded by thousands of people, and my anxiety just went overloaded. And then I had to run about 6 miles just to cross the finish line. And each moment it was so frustrating because it wasn't because I wasn't able to run. I had the fitness level. It was just mentally I wasn't able to keep going. So I had to force myself. It's like I was carrying an anvil behind me.
Yeah.
All that weight, and I was just keep pushing and pushing, all because I wanted a victory to call my own. Because I kept telling myself, if I give up now and just go home, I'm gonna regret it,
Yeah.
and I'm never gonna get my win.
Yeah.
So I pushed on. I pushed on despite the intrusive thoughts gnawing itself at me, and I crossed the finish line. And that was my first victory,
But where did you get
which is
the
great.
you had to dig deep, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I had to dig deep,
Yeah.
really deep, and where that came from. See, that's a question I've been asking for a long time because I never knew where that strength came from. It's only after a few. It's only when I ran the London to Brighton, my first ultra marathon, which was back in 2017, when I decided to run that event while fasting as well to get
Wow.
all my trauma and depression and suicidation all in one place, so I no longer feel like a victim.
Yeah.
I did a lot of crazy stuff just to get just to be a step ahead of my symptoms because I was that committed. But I tell you what, though, there was that one occasion during the ultra marathon. I was about 20 miles away because it's 100 kilometers, it's about 69 miles, I think it was. I was 20 miles away to the finish line, but I was done physically, mentally, and spiritually. I was done. I was drained. I'm done. So I sat down on a road, on a countryside road. I said, yeah, I'm done. I can't go on anymore, right?
Yeah.
I came this far and I only have 20 miles left, and I'm already giving up because I can't do it anymore. I can't go on anymore. So I stayed there for maybe about half an hour. And the crazy part was, despite it being a countryside road, not a single car drove past. I'm like, all right, if I collapse here, then I'd be stranded.
Yeah.
But I had a realization at that moment. I started reflecting on why I took part, why I fasted, and for this whole run, why I did this crazy act. And then I started reflecting. I started looking back, and I remembered why I started. It's, it's because I want to be better than my
Yeah.
previous self. I want to improve. And that's when it hit me, Zoe. That strength I was talking about, where all that strength came from, it was always there. Because strength comes in response to a need, not a desire. Every time I wished for strength, I never had it. Every time I desired strength, it never lasted. Everyone has a strength, but it only comes when you need it the most and when you have that belief in yourself as well. So you need it and you gotta have some self-belief and you need to stay committed to your goal. If you have all three and the conditions are just right, you get an abundance amount of energy that come out of nowhere. And because of that abundance amount of energy, I was able to get back up and run the remaining 20 miles. And I crossed the finish line as well.
Oh
Because the thing
wow.
is, I crossed the finish line because 59 people took part in that event and only nine crossed the finish line. I was number seven.
Wow.
And from that, because of that, and when I first discovered that strength, I started putting the work in it. I realized that maybe I can turn this into a source of energy if I can harness it. So I started taking discipline into account because I realized that discipline is what my mind and body needed. That in order to combat my suicidal ideation and my depression, I need to reinforce my mind. But the only way I'm going to do that is to also strengthen my body as well as my brain by by pushing the limits.
Yeah.
It's either breaking your limits or reaching your limits. So when you reach your limits, great. But now you got to break those limits and reach a new plateau. So you've seen some of my journey already.
Yeah.
And I started doing a lot of ultra marathons. So from 100 kilometers, from my first ultra marathon, I started doing 30 miles, then up to 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 miles, then 200, then 250, then 300 miles. Then it turned to 1,000 miles. I
Wow.
kept leveling up because I knew if I need to stay alive, if I wanted to live, I need to level up and I need to put more effort into leveling up because if I didn't, then my demons would just kill me off. And here's the crazy part, and we touched upon this yesterday as well, is that in all my five suicide attempts, any one of them could be my last. If any one of them was successful, if one suicide attempt was successful, Zoe, I wouldn't be alive here today. Everything
No.
that I've achieved so far wouldn't exist. I would have died knowing that things would not have gotten better.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part, isn't it?
It's
That
scary.
yeah, it is. This version of yourself would not exist right now. I mean, we would never have met. I
No.
mean, half the people I not met in the last couple of years, I would never have known them.
No.
And
And that's what we
no,
were
it's
saying
it's the
before.
thing when you
So, sorry, that's what we
no
were
no go on.
saying. That's what we were saying before. When we decided to discuss this topic, I was kind of I remember sending you a message to say, yeah, let's talk about it. Great, it's good to talk about. It's not good. It's not a good topic, but it's a good topic to talk about. But it will be good if we can show that there's some positive aspects from it, and that's us being here today. That's the positive side of it.
Yeah, you're right because whenever we see, I've seen a lot of social media posts on suicide, and oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this as well. In the past, I would always talk about the gritty side of suicide a lot more,
Yeah,
and a lot of it was always factual information anyway, to raise that awareness that it's happening a lot, it's affecting a lot of communities, the rise of suicide in men, in women, the different ideals. But one thing I've also realized, even though those are good information that people do need to be aware of that reality as well,
yeah,
I also realized that I never spoke on the positive side as well. What happens when you come out of it?
yeah.
How to,
That's what I want to touch upon. What happens when you come out then? Not to negate the fact of when you go through it, because it's horrendous. I've been there.
yeah,
It's horrendous. It's horrible. But you can
yeah, it
get
is.
through it. You can get through it, and you can see to the other side. And we're both living proof of that.
Damn right we can. Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing I'll always tell someone, it's not going to be easy. And that's the point. We need to put the effort in. We need to put the work in. We need to seek help. And if the help's not there, then we seek it more. The thing is, though, it all comes down to our mindset. In order to rewire our brains, we
Yeah.
need to actually program it in such a way where we have to, sometimes we need to force ourselves. I
Yeah,
know
but the
hearing the
thing
word
is, it,
things,
it it can be difficult to force yourself because you can't see out of that box or out of the
no,
clouds that you're in at the time. So it can be difficult.
absolutely. It is difficult. Even forcing yourself is absolutely difficult. But even then, we have to keep trying to force ourselves because the way I see it, there's no other option. We can either suffer or we can suffering growth or suffering regret. Either way, there's gonna be suffering involved. And and I'm sorry to say that to anyone who's listening, but there is no there's no sweet way out of it. There isn't, and I've tried to find the sweet way. There's like three. I remember when I was addicted to when I used to suffer from alcoholism before my first suicide attempt, and when I was an alcoholic, I became an alcoholic because I avoided my depression. I avoided all the traumas, and I just led me to alcoholism, to alcohol. Then gradually, I became an alcoholic gradually to the point that I was reliant on alcohol to keep me going. The only reason that I started taking responsibility for my alcoholism is because my drinking buddy, as it were, he got killed by a drunk driver. A drunk driver, he got killed. And then that affected me a lot because I kept asking, not because I wasn't sad about my friend's death, but I kept asking, what if I was that drink driver? What if
Yeah.
I took someone's life? What if I took someone's dad, uncle, brother, sibling away?
Yeah.
What if I destroyed someone's whole life all because I was too much of a coward to face my issues?
Yeah.
That that's where it comes down to. And if I
Yeah.
and when I end up in prison, it wouldn't be the thought of prison that scared me. It was the thought of knowing I took someone's life.
Yeah.
And and because that instant was the kick in the ass I needed to basically help myself. So I start seeking help for my alcoholism. And in 7 months, 7 grueling months of hard work, I became sober. And now I'm like almost 12 years sober.
Oh, that's
And
brilliant, Nazim.
yeah, oh, thank you. And the 12 year, and the thing is, the temptation is always there. It's always going to exist. But I keep reminding myself why I started.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. And even during the alcoholic period, there was no easy way out of it. You gotta suffer, right? But if you
Yeah.
suffer to be better than who you were yesterday, then you gotta keep going. And it's like we have to keep improving ourselves over and over.
But you,
Otherwise,
yeah.
yeah.
But you
No, go
said
on.
you said that you would be a coward. But
Yeah.
do you think that's a strong word? Do you know what I mean? Like some people might be going through something and they might not be strong enough to face their demons head on.
It depends. It depends. It depends on the situation. For
Yeah.
example, what I deem as a coward is when you're aware that there's a problem
Yeah.
and and you know that you're it's affecting your behavior and everything else and it starts affecting the people around you, even starts
Yeah.
hurting the people around you, and you're aware of it and you still not going to do anything about it, then it becomes a cowardly behavior because
Yeah. That makes sense.
behind because there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of people who were abused, but then they became abusers
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Do you see the line that there is always a line?
Yeah.
There's always a line, I mean, if your behavior isn't affecting anyone, basically you don't then you do what you do, right? If it's not
Yeah.
harming anyone, right?
Yeah.
But if you know it's willfully harming the people around you,
Yeah.
then hell, say you have children and it's affecting your children and you know it's affecting your children,
Yeah.
there's a line now and it becomes a cowardly behavior after that,
Okay.
and do you see what I mean? That's what I mean. That's the
No, no, no.
context I mean.
I'm glad you explained it because I wanted to hear an explanation to understand it more. So I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's whenever I use the word couch. So whenever you see my post and I use couch, it's always in those contexts as well.
Yeah.
It's when it starts hurting other people and you are aware of it. That's when I said when I was an alcoholic, I call myself a coward because now I was aware of the action. If I didn't do anything about my alcoholism, even after that instant, I would be willfully hurting everyone around me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even yeah, so it's 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 and it's good that we're having this conversation as well.
Yeah.
Having these conversation contexts as well, because if we didn't, then hardly anyone would know about it, or maybe they would know about it, but wouldn't know how to approach the subject.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, get the wheel moving, and and so I always have just to anyone who's listening, my suicidal ideation hasn't gone away. I still have it till this very day. Even now, I still have it. And
So do you
every
still
single
have
day, I have it.
depression?
Yeah, I still have depression. That's never going to go away. But I've made peace with that. When I mean I made peace with that, I mean is that I found ways to manage it. So whenever I have my depressive episodes, suicide ideation, because of all the training and effort and discipline I've spent over the years reinforcing, my demons have to go through a series of walls just to
Okay.
get to my core. That
Okay.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
by the time it gets to my actual main core, I've already found ways to actually manage it, and I'm
Yeah.
already being my demon. So that's why exercise is important. and training your mind and body is so important because you're giving yourself a leverage. You're giving yourself ammunition against, because if your diet is important as well. I will always tell people your diet is important, your exercise is important, your environment is vital as well. You need to be surrounded by people who want the best for you, meaning you can't be surrounded by people who sit idly and watch you destroy yourself and
Yeah.
tell you you're fine the way you are. You need people who tell you what you need to hear, not what you
Yeah.
want to hear.
Yeah.
Because when you have folks who tell you what you need to hear, sure, it'll hurt your feelings. Well, that's the truth. It's supposed to hurt your feelings. But here's the
Yeah.
best part. They support you and get you through it together.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
difference.
like when I was overweight. My brother told me that I was overweight. And I hated it when he told me. I was like, you can't tell me. But it was true. I was unhealthy. I was borderline diabetic. I had fatty
Yeah.
liver. Do you know what I mean? So he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. Let me just charge this.
No, and it's, and I'm glad your brother was able to say to your face, really, because we need that in our lives. Because even when we're so lost in our thoughts, in montages of thoughts, we need someone to basically extend their arm out and say, and reach out and just say, you're not alone, but I'm gonna keep it real with you, even if it's gonna break your heart.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Our salvation lies in our destruction. And 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 it goes to a lot of my own past experiences because I've lost folks to suicide over the years. And I often contemplate and reflect on what I could have done different. I've seen folks hang themselves from the ceiling, found folks in a bathtub filled with crimson water, and I became indifferent towards it because when you go through that much war, because I have had depression since I was 8 years old. My whole life was just one war and one battle after the next. Like I've never known. I had to pretend to have emotions when I was a kid, to the point that people thought I had lack of emotions, when really I didn't have lack of emotions. I just didn't know how to express the emotions I never really felt. I never was never really allowed to explore. And the first time I felt when I didn't feel like I had a mental illness, when I didn't have suicide ideation, is when I met a girl and who looked past um, the face and saw me for what I really was. Um, that love broke my heart, really, because that was the first time I actually felt actual love, actual unconditional love, no conditional love, actual unconditional love. and and I would say that was a catalyst moment where and she had bipolar and cancer as well. Um, so I supported her quite a bit as well. And that's when I realized I had the capacity to support someone with mental illness. But it turns out I had the capacity for it. But I supported her. I remember each time she would tell me just to leave her, to spare me essentially. But I never left her because I had genuine affection for her. And you don't leave someone in the time of darkness, because you just don't do that, right?
Mm.
And I was with her till her final moments, when she passed away from cancer. And so when she passed away, that's when I started drinking. That's Her death is what caused me to start drinking, start avoiding my depression and everything else. And so then the suicide ideation returned. That's
Yeah.
then the second time I started taking my life. That's when it returned. But then I met my mentor when I went travel. After my sobriety and after coming out of section, I started traveling and I met my mentor. My mentor, he was like the best man in my life, like a second dad, I would say. And he was a man in his 60s, and I'm gonna say straight, he was one handsome guy. Like a man in his 60s, he was one handsome looking guy for a man. Like that's the first thing I know. Is like, damn, you are a handsome guy. But there was something about his eyes. He was he's been through wars and hearing his story. And I remember meeting him And it's out. I was on top of a mountain. It was in Santorini as well. I was on the top of a mountain looking at the edge, right? And then I hear a voice in the background shouting directly at me. And the exact words were, if you're going to jump, don't hesitate. I turn around and this is this guy. His name was Abel. And there he was. The first time I met my mentor, Abel, the first thing he said was, if you're going to jump, don't hesitate. And I told him, I'm not going to jump. He said, good. If you are going to jump, then don't hesitate, kid. And the reason why you didn't jump is because deep down, that voice in your head is telling you not to jump. It's called hope. Listen to it. Right?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
deep.
And this, yeah, and this guy was a stranger to me. And the way he said it came from experience. Like, when certain tone about certain people, it's
Yeah,
like wisdom.
yeah,
It came from experience. And I asked to be taken under his mentorship,
yeah.
you know, and he said no, essentially, granted. But I just kept coming back. I just kept coming back, asking, can you please take me under wing? Because you know what you're talking about. And but he kept saying no. Eventually he said yes, but I had to pass a certain test. And the test was he put me in the middle the of of the forest, right? Blindfolded in a forest, took the blindfold off, gave me a compass and some rations, and he left. But before he left, he said, if you can find your way out of this forest and your way back to me, I'll take you under my wing. It took me 3 days to get out of that forest.
Oh my God.
And the purpose of the purpose of that training, purpose of that test was for me to open my eyes up because we've become so consumed with technology that we forgot to see with our eyes. We forgot to see with our soul. Because if we did, we would notice that no tree and plant looks the same as the other. They're all different.
Yeah,
Because I
wow.
started acknowledging that they were all different, I found my way out, and he took me under my wing, under his wing. But I learned so much from him. He taught me hard work and the purpose of training, and because of that instant, is what really got me into fitness. He gave me the initial discipline, if that makes sense, to help
Yeah,
me because he knew about suicidal ideation, and
yeah,
he said that the only way you're going to beat your suicidal ideation is with a strong mind. So you need to train your mind over and over. And he said, unfortunately, kid, you have it for life. People are dealt with bad cards, but it doesn't matter. It's how you play those cards that count.
yeah.
So play your cards well and play them wisely. And I know
I
I'm
think
going
that's
like
made me cry nearly.
and he passed away like 4 months after I came back to the UK. And but before I left, he told me to carry on, wayward son. And I was like, and that was when I took the moniker Wayward after that, because he gave me the nickname Wayward Son. One, because we both liked Carry On Wayward Son by the Kansas, right?
Yeah,
And second, right, it's wayward has a lot of meaning behind it. He said, carry on, wayward son, on your lonesome road. And so when I came back, I think that initial discipline is what helped me because what helped me because it's easy for me to say that I did it on my own, that I didn't need any support, but that would be a lie, Zoe. The truth is I had support and I didn't realize it. Every person, being the girl I loved, my mentor, or the people that passed away, who lost their fight, they all helped me in some way. That's where the strength came from. The strength wasn't just there, it came from my lived experiences. It came from a place of hurt, pain, and love.
so you needed people around you to
And
support
that was
you.
yeah, you need that. It's so easy to say that you don't, it's so easy to say that you don't need anyone in your life, that you can get through life on your own. You can't. Sure, I beat my addiction on my own, but it would have been a lot more easier with people around me who
Yeah,
supported me. But
yeah.
unfortunately, I didn't know anything then.
And
So
if you don't have anyone to support you, there's the Samaritans and
there
Mind.
is support. Yeah,
Yeah, there's support
there
groups.
is support. There is support groups out there. There is support out there, and in my heart goes out to people who don't have a support network.
Yeah,
I mean, I currently don't really have a support network currently right now, which is fine because I found ways to manage myself anyway at that point, and I have one or two people, as it were. But if you don't have a support network, there is support out there. You
yeah,
can, and it's just as basic as talking to someone, just having a conversation with someone over tea or coffee. Because the thing is, we all have scars, right? These
yeah,
are my scars,
yeah,
self-harm, that can't be seen. And I used to cover this up with bandage for like a good few years. But then one day I just took them off because I shouldn't be ashamed of my scars, of where I came from. This is my history, and I own my history.
yeah,
Is it what, regardless of how tragic it may be. And even though I lost people along the way, because I used to think before I started fighting back, I used to think that my life was meaningless, that there was no point of being born. Then I remember the people that I lost. Were their lives meaningless? Did they
no,
not matter?
no, they
No,
mattered.
they
Yeah,
did. Their lives mattered. The courageous fallen, the anguish fallen, but their lives mattered because we, the living, refuse to forget them.
yeah,
Because my soldiers don't fucking yield, Zoe.
yeah,
My soldiers push on. We scream out. We rage. I know whoever's listening to this, I know it seems like that I'm making it sound easy. And believe me, even me saying it kind of sounds like it's easy, but it's not. It took me 10 years. I had to work for myself. 10 years I put in the work, and I faltered. Some days I faltered. I fell off the wagon and I had to start again. But that's fine. There's no shame in starting again. You just pick up from where you left off and just push on, because we all want to get better. We want things to get improved. But when I start to put in the work, I wasn't looking for my life to get better or for things to change. I just want to be better than my previous self. I just wanted to win. I did not want to be a victim of my own demons for the rest of my life because I've visited elderly folks, Zoe. I've seen more people than I am who faced that, and it just ruined their lives, affected their relationships and everything, all because they didn't want to, they gave up. That's what came down to. And I didn't want to be like that. That scared me.
yeah.
That frightened me. So I
Because
told myself, yeah,
the thing is, you don't when you're on that path, on that journey, and you're at that crossroads.
yeah,
They say, and I can speak from experience myself, you don't want to die.
no, no,
You just want to stop the
no.
suffering.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. You just want to stop suffering. And I'm glad you brought that up because I found myself at a crossroad and there were paths laid out for me. One path was, well, I can just drink myself to death. The second path, I can just take my life and put an end to it there and then, right? But there's a third path, a path that's not been cleared. Both the first two paths have already been laid out for you by someone else. The third path you need to make for yourself,
Yeah,
carve it out yourself. I chose the third path. I carved it out with all its thorns, its nettles, it's muddy ground. I carved out my own path. Yeah, you're right. I never want to die. That's the truth. I want to live. But in order for me to live, I need to stop sacrificing a piece of my soul. Because honestly, I end up like Voldemort. When you look at Voldemort from Harry Potter, he sacrificed a piece of his soul all because he was afraid of death, all because he was afraid of dying. And that and how he was in the inside reflected his his outward appearance. Death is I'm not afraid of death. It's not death that scares me. It's knowing that I could have done something with my life if I just had enough courage to take the first step. I could change my whole life. And I realized that when I was much younger. And in 10 years of work, I'm in a much better place physically and mentally. I'm a little bit wiser than I was all
That's
those years ago. It's
amazing.
like,
And it just goes to show that you got through.
yeah, I got through and I'm still getting through because even when even when I still have these ideations still, I see something beyond this horizon. Maybe what I see is hope, or maybe it's just another hell. But fact is, I'll only know which is which as long as I keep moving forward. Hell or hope, I don't know what's beyond the horizon.
But you got to
I
keep
don't know.
moving forwards.
Find out, yeah. And I
Got to
want to
keep
find
moving
out what it.
forward. That's
I
beautiful.
want. I want to know what's beyond the horizon. If it's gonna be another big ass demon that wants to have me for dinner, well, we gotta go out some way. That's fine. But it could be hope. It could
It
be
could be hope.
something. Yeah, but I have to go through the wars. I have to go through the wars, and unfortunately, I know in this day and age, people want peace without the wars, but that's not how life works. If you want peace, you gotta go through the wars because it's from wars you'll know that you don't have to solve everything by fighting. You'll only know that. And you see, life isn't just about fighting, it's also about cultivating life. And you can't have a garden by just fighting the weeds. You need to cultivate the garden, the soil, and be a gardener, right? But you'll only be a gardener once you know how to fight. And you got to know how to fight. That's the thing. Because from fighting, you'll become a man of peace. And I found that I've become a man of peace. And I know that because of my last ultra marathon, the one I did last month, for the first time in my life, in all 39 of my marathons, Zoe, I ran as as I was fighting for my life, you
That's
know.
amazing.
But the 40th one, I ran as a man of peace. There was no suicidal ideation.
That's
There was no
amazing.
depression. I
And you would
As if
never,
I was going for a walk.
and you would never have been able to achieve that had you have not
Yeah,
persevered.
yeah, you're right. If I never actually pushed through, if I never took the initiative and just decide, you know what, F the demons, F the depression, come at me and push through. And now demons run when I go to war. That's that's the reality of it now.
That's brilliant.
And yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
got to push through because you have to push on. There's no easy answer. I'm sorry for those who were hoping for an easy answer to listening to this, but no, I'm gonna be real with you. For someone who's been having suicide ideation for the last 24 years and somehow alive, I'm only alive because I pushed on. Because otherwise, if I didn't, I should be dead. And I would have been dead if I didn't push on. I'd rather death claim me when it's my time rather than hasten its arrival. I'm not interested in meeting death again. I've met the guy, and honestly, I'm not interested in seeing him anytime soon.
Okay.
but
Amazing.
but
Well,
Yeah.
Nazim, thank you so much for sharing your viewpoint. And again, I just want to reiterate that we are not professionals. We are just individuals sharing our own opinions and our own lived
Yeah.
experiences. So thank you so much. When's your next marathon?
It might be the end of June or the beginning of July. I've not
Okay,
set an actual, yeah, but it'll be an ultra marathon. It'll be my 40, well, 41st, so 41. So
okay.
I'm thinking about going to 50 and then I might retire. But then again, knowing myself, I probably end up going up to 100. So
Um,
I've been doing this for like 8 years now. This whole marathon is,
wow.
it's not like I planned to make a career out of it. It just kind of happened, you know.
Okay, yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, but I'll let you
Well,
know how when that
you have our community support 100%, and you know that we're
is.
following your journey. So thank you so much for today. Thank you, and for being so kind to re-record this from yesterday. So
I
thank
think
you
it went a
so
little bit.
much.
I
And
think it went a little bit better the second time around.
it
I
did.
feel
I
like,
thought it'd be. It's like when you write an essay and then you
yeah,
lose the essay on your laptop and then you write it again, but you remember some of the stuff that you've written before and add on top of it.
yeah,
So
it's a
it
lot
was,
better, isn't it?
yeah, it's better. So great. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch, obviously.
No, you're
Mwah.
welcome. You take care, Zoe.
And you.
Peace
Bye
out.
bye. Bye.